This week, we are talking about the number one factor that has to do with whether other kids want to be around our neurodivergent kids or not. The number one thing that determines whether our kids have other kids who like them, whether our kids have other kids who actively avoid them, even to the point of other kids who may go out of their way to be unkind or disrespectful to our kids. It all comes back to one thing. And this one thing is what our entire program here at Starfish Social Club is based on. So that is why we are focusing this entire episode on this one concept. The best thing about this concept is that once our students are aware of this one thing, they can change it if they choose to do so. And we spend weeks in our program teaching our students all about how to change this one thing. Stay tuned. That's what we're talking about this week.
Awesome.
Okay, so little teaser there in the beginning. The one thing that we're talking about today is the concept of reputation. Our kids come into our program with 3 different levels of awareness in terms of the concept of reputation. Our reputation is what other people think about us. It's basically the ideas and the thoughts that other people have when they see us, when they hear our name, when they have any kind of association with us. That's what our reputation is. It's what other people think about us. A lot of our students have built a reputation by default, meaning they have a reputation that they did not choose, and they don't understand that that's the case. So the basic level of awareness when it comes to reputation is some of our students come in and have no concept of reputation. They may have not even ever heard that word before. So even the word reputation is a new word for them. They have no concept of how other people perceive them and how that's tied to their thoughts and their actions. This looks like kids who have big reactions to things, kids who think everyone's their friend, kids who aren't always, maybe complain a lot about other things. One question that I love to ask that gives me some insight into this is I will ask a kiddo, if I were to ask your siblings or your classmates at school, what would they tell me about you? And sometimes I'll say, what 3 words would they say about you? And if I have a kiddo that says something like, oh, I'm really, everybody likes me, I have a lot of friends, or I'm really kind, but I've seen different from them, or parents have reported different from them. Sometimes kids even say, I don't know, I have no idea. That's a great window into recognizing that they're at a very basic level of awareness when it comes to reputation. The second level of awareness that we see is kids who can tell you other people's reputations. They tend to be kids who like to give other kids a lot of feedback. They think other kids are rude, annoying, mean, whatever the case may be, but they have no concept of their reputation. So they don't understand what other people think about them, but they are usually quick to point out things that other kids do that might be rude or annoying. A great assessment for this one is I'll ask a kiddo, tell me something that your insert person here, mother does that really annoys you. And sometimes you'll get kids who are like, oh man, and they're just going and going, right? She does this and she says this, and she makes me make my bed. And she's always like telling me that I have to get ready, and she doesn't let me watch TV, So they've got this whole list of things that they can say about other people. And then I will say, tell me 3 things that your mom thinks you do that are annoying. And they don't know. They don't know. Or they think nothing, right? Well, I don't do anything that my mom thinks is annoying. Whereas mom is sitting over there like, really? So that's level 2 social awareness when it comes to the concept of reputation, is kids who have strong opinions about other people's reputations, but no concept of their own reputation. Level 3 are students who are aware of the concept of reputation. They are aware of their reputation, but they have no idea why that is their reputation or how to change it. The most common thing that kids say when they're aware of their reputation is, Steph, other kids say I'm annoying, but I have no idea why. That's the most common thing we hear, is that our kids have a reputation for being annoying, but they don't know why other kids feel that way about them. And so because of that, they have no idea how to change that. I remember a student a few years ago, he was in 5th grade, and he came to Starfish and was telling us that his class was taking a field trip that day, and they were all waiting to get on the bus, and the other kids just kept telling him, stop it, you're being so annoying. Why are you always so annoying? And he's telling us this story, and he said, I wasn't even doing anything. I don't even know why they're saying that. We talk about the concept of being annoying in our class, and almost every student resonates with that. Almost every kiddo has been called annoying at some point. The kids who haven't, we do have groups of kids who really don't have reputations for being annoying. They tend to have reputations for being shy, which isn't actually a thing, in my opinion. In my opinion, shy doesn't exist. Shyness is social anxiety. Our kids who have reputation for being shy are our kids who actually have social anxiety. So fortunately, there's a kinder, gentler word for that, which is shy. But shy does not exist, in my opinion. Shy is like a cover up for the fact that these kids don't know how to interact with other people, are nervous about interacting with other people, and often choose not to interact with other people. So shy is just a nicer, kinder, like rose-colored glasses way to say that. But it also undervalues the point that there's a problem here, that our kids are struggling. Shyness is kind of a mask for a much bigger problem. So that's where we're going to talk about our concept of reputation today. We are going to focus on what is the main core of our program, especially the first 8 weeks, our module 1, which is called identity. It is helping our students decide what they want their reputation to be. And then we teach them the things that they're doing that get in the way of that, and the things that they can do to create the reputation that they want for themselves. So for everybody in the whole world, we all tend to fall into 3 pretty general categories when it comes to the reputation that we want for ourselves. One of those categories is smart, and all the variations of smart. Most people in the world would like other people to think that they are smart, intelligent, right? Whatever other words you want to use that go along with that. Our Starfish kids, I think that percentage is even higher. Almost all of our kids here would like to have a reputation for being smart. Number 2 is kind. kind, helpful, friendly, whatever word you want to use for that. Most people in the world would like to have a reputation for being kind and friendly. And number 3 is funny. This one doesn't apply to everybody. Not everybody cares about having a reputation for being funny. But one of the points that we make is that we don't want a reputation for being not funny.
Yes.
So even if we don't care about being funny, we definitely don't want to be the person that everybody's like, he's not very funny at all. Those are the 3 main reputations that exist out in the world. And so that's a big part of the identity module in our program, is helping kids identify which one of those reputations they want and how they can create it and what gets in the way of those reputations. So we're going to share with you guys some examples of what our students do that get in the way of each one of these reputations, as well as some different things that they can do to create these reputations for themselves. So before we jump into that, Ramir, is there anything else that you would like to?
I don't think so. You
Okay.
did. That was excellent. That was like point by point. That was great.
Okay. So we're going to start with reputation for being smart, because that tends to be really important for our students. Reputation for being smart. The number one thing that I notice that our kids do that they think gives them a reputation for being smart, but actually doesn't, is correcting other people. Our kids think that if they correct other people, that the people who are in the audience will see and hear this and think, oh man, she's really smart. She knows more than the teacher. Or, oh man, that's a really intelligent kid. He knows so much about space, or whatever the case may be. Our kids tend to correct other people, even about things that don't really matter, like a spelling error that their teacher makes. So obviously there are some things that do matter and should be corrected, and anybody should correct them. Our kids tend to take it to the extreme and correct anything that may be said or done or implied or inferred, even if it's not a big deal and does not really matter. So I would say that's our number one example of things that our kids do that they think gives them a reputation for being smart and does not. So here's the thing about all these missteps with our kids, is most of them lead to the same outcome. Instead of having a reputation for being smart, it gives our kids a reputation for being annoying. Basically, when our kids do things too much, too often, too extreme, it leads to them having a reputation for being annoying, which is why that's such a prevalent reputation that our kids have. A lot of our kids try really hard to have the reputations that they want, but everything they're trying is counterproductive. And so that's why our kids have reputations for being annoying, is because the things that they're doing, they think give them the reputation they want. They actually do the opposite. So reputation for being smart. In our program, we have a visual. It's a scale that we call reputation in moderation. And what we teach the kids is that we want to be somewhere in the moderate zone on this scale for pretty much everything. Given that we all have different personalities, we all have different ways that we show up in the world. So the scale has a range to it. We even talk about Goldilocks, right? Things being just right. But when we talk about a reputation for being smart, and we talk about correcting other people, there definitely is a just right zone for that. Remember, do you want to touch on what we talk about in our lesson? Just some examples of how kids can go too far one way or the other when it comes to correcting other people.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've talked about that is important for our kids to correct others, like in these situations, would be when it comes to mispronouncing their name. If my name's Ramiro, but if someone calls me, I don't even know what they would call me, but some of the students like mispronounce my name, or they'll give me like a random name. I correct them because I don't want people to think that my name is something that it's not. Um and so like students, maybe like their teachers or people or like other acquaintances or like other students in their classrooms, if they say their name wrong, ideally they would correct them that first time, so that way from now on they get called the correct name. But sometimes students might never correct that, and that at that point, like as time goes on, the more and more difficult it would be to eventually correct that. So yeah, so correcting when people say our names wrong or give us the wrong name, that is something that we definitely touch on. um oh man, it is. What were you say?
I was just gonna, so the kids can go too far toward one end of the scale if they're never correcting other people.
Mhm.
Just like Romero said, you can end up being called the wrong name, right? If you're never correcting other people, we don't get a reputation for being smart if we don't ever correct things like that.
Mhm.
But then if we're going too far the other way,
Mhm. I know there've been like phrases or like little things that TV shows point out or like things like that where a character is known for being the actually person, meaning whenever someone is saying a fact or telling a story or going through something, maybe our students will try to jump in and say, "Oh, actually, this is what happened," or "Oh, actually, that's wrong. This is what happened." Um, so that tends to become their reputation, where they try to jump in too much, or they try to correct too much, or they try to give even like they even try to give their opinion too much, even when people aren't asking for their opinion. Um, and it ends up affecting their reputation and becoming annoying, which in turn, makes students not want to talk to them, harder for them to have social conversations with other people, and so um, we try to, like, I know that this is kind of tricky just because we have to use our what's it called? Like it's up to our discretion to decide when it's something is worth correcting or not. But we definitely want to make sure that we're not going too far on that side of the scale because yeah, at that point, even though we think that we sound smart or we sound intelligent, or that we're helping even, um, it ends up backfiring on us and our reputations. And so we try to show students different examples of how it's okay for someone to misspell something like on the whiteboard at school, or for someone to say, I don't even know, like something that's very minor and not necessarily important. Like it's okay to let things go, for the sake of your reputation. So yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And because our students tend to be rule based and black and white,
Mm-hmm.
that concept of letting things go can be really difficult. And so we just focus on, does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And yeah, a teacher misspelling something on the board, as long as everybody knows what the teacher means by what they wrote or what they said, it does not matter if they spelled it incorrectly. Obviously, if it's spelling, it matters, but in most other cases, it does not matter. You can still understand what that person's trying to say. So yeah, that's one example of reputation for being smart and how we use the scale. Our scale goes from 0 to 10. So there's plenty of space in between that allows for different personalities. And we talk about where each kiddo is on the scale. And if some of them are below a 3, meaning they're not correcting other people ever, or they're above a 7, then we just ask them to think about that and think about the reputation that they have. And it's really interesting. It creates a lot of light bulb moments for our kids when we go through these lessons and they start to recognize the things that they've been saying and doing and connecting the dots to why they have a reputation for being annoying. And now they know what to do differently. So yeah, that's great examples for reputation for being smart. A reputation for being kind. This one's interesting because it's not really thought about that somebody could be too kind to the point to where it harms their reputation, right? That's not really something we usually think about, but we've experienced it here at Starfish. So it's another thing that's on our scale, is being too kind. And so I'll share some examples of what this looks like in the real world and how our kids can get a reputation for being annoying, for being too kind. Even I had a student tell me the other day that the other kids call her teacher's pet. That's a great example of that she's trying to be so helpful and friendly that she's actually gotten, teacher's pet is not a term of endearment, right? It's kind of a derogatory term. Our kids might not understand that, but it really is a term that's implying that somebody is, in the good graces of the teacher, but doesn't have the best reputation amongst the other kids.
Right.
So some scenarios that have happened here at Starfish several years ago during summer camp, we were outside having our snack, and I, at the time, would write things on the whiteboard for our lessons. I haven't written on a whiteboard in years at this point, but this was several years ago. And so I had everything on the whiteboard for our lesson that day. And we do summer camp and we do evening groups in the summer. And so it's the same thing for both groups. And we're out at snack, and one of the students came out and she said, "Hey, Steph, I saw that you hadn't erased the whiteboard, so I went ahead and erased it for you." Wah, wah. Oh my gosh. That was pretty frustrating because I didn't want it erased, and I actually had to go back and write it all over again. So she obviously was trying to be kind and helpful, but in the process went too far over and became annoying because I had to go back and do extra work to make up for what she had done. Similarly, a couple years ago, I had a bunch of books in one of the rooms that I had organized into 5 or 6 different piles, and each pile had a reason. There was a reason that those books were in those piles. So probably 50 different books organized into these different piles. And a student came along and mushed them all together into like one big pile. Steph, I organized the books for you. I put the books together. Oh man. Yeah. So same situation. It was actually really frustrating for me and caused me to have to go back and do extra work. But both situations where the kids thought they were being really helpful and kind. They were going out of their way to do something that they thought was helpful and kind, but it ended up giving me thoughts that was pretty annoying. That was pretty frustrating. I hope that doesn't happen again. So those are some examples of kind. Another thing that we talk about is even something like saying hello. And how that can go either way on the scale. So do you want to run with that example? I totally just made that. Y'all, I have to give so much credit to Ramiro. We don't script this at all. We just kind of talk about the general idea of what we're going to talk about. And then I get on here and just start rambling because that's what I do. But then I throw it over to Ramiro and I'm like, "Hey, what do you want to say about this?" And I just totally put him on the spot to share whatever he wants to share, having given him very little prep or warning about where my brain's, because I don't ever really know where I'm going. I know where we're starting and I know what we're talking about, but I have no idea what ideas I'm going to come up with along the way. So I would just like to give some props to Ramiro for being so flexible and going with the flow with me and being willing to jump on here with me and just ride the wave.
Of course. Okay, so I guess I'll start on the 0 or 1 scale, or 0 or 1 end of the scale when it comes to our students saying hello to other people, or in this case, not really saying hello to other people. I know we've talked about this before in other episodes, but I feel like it comes up, with this a lot. When our students come in, if they come in before we let them in, then they all wait in the waiting room together. And most of the time, the younger students come in with their parents. Sometimes it's so quiet that we don't think anyone's here until we open up the door, and the waiting room is literally full of like 5 to 8 people, parents and kids. And so, in those moments, I feel like I question what the parents think of the other students in there, because if the other students aren't talking to their kids, or they're not even saying hello when they enter, or saying hello to them, or even their parents, maybe their parents don't even say hi to each other. I don't know. But if our students don't say hi to each other enough, it definitely makes the other person think like questionable or like negative thoughts about that person, like maybe they're in a bad mood, or maybe they don't like my child, or maybe if I'm this other student, then like I'll think maybe they're mad at me, or maybe I said something that hurt their feelings, or maybe I did something and they don't like me right now. So at that point, like being a 0 or a 1 or a 2, even if that student is not upset, or like they're genuinely a friendly person, if they don't say hello to other people, no one knows that they're a friendly person. It's something that simple by saying hello when you enter a room or enter your classroom, that gives people like good thoughts, or like a good feeling when they get, or when they say hello to them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to have a reputation for being kind and friendly if we do not say hello. It's such a little thing.
Yeah.
So much of these are little
Right,
things that make
exactly.
a big difference.
Yeah.
And just saying hello to people is definitely one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how a 0, 1, or 2. However, being like an 8, 9, or 10 on the scale means that you're saying hello too much. And what that looks like is, if you're entering our classroom that already has 7 students in there, plus me and plus Steph, that's 9 people in there. And so if you enter and you say, I'm just gonna make up some names real quick. Hi, John. And then you say, hi, Steph. And then hi, Ramiro. And then hello, Ben. And then hello, Jeff. If you say hello 9 separate times, that could be overwhelming, and that could get annoying to the other students, or to everyone else who's in that group. And so we talk about how, in that case, instead of saying hello individually to every single person who's in that room, just say hello everyone, or hey guys, or hey y'all, something that simple. So you're still saying hello, you're still acknowledging everyone, but you're not going in depth or like individually, pointing people out to say hello to everyone like that.
Yeah, I think along the same lines, saying hello to the same person multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we work on that sometimes too, saying hello to the same person over and over.
Yeah.
So we just say hello to somebody the first time that we see them in that scenario. And then we don't say hello to them again in that scenario, right? In that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, great example of just a reputation for being kind. It seems like that one would be hard to mess up.
Yeah.
But it actually is. Unfortunately, there are definitely ways that we can either not do enough to have a reputation for being kind, even if we are really kind, or we can go overboard to the point where it gets annoying.
Yeah.
And then our third reputation that we were focusing on is reputation for being funny. I think this one is definitely easier to think of examples of, what gets in the way of that. Reputation for being funny. One of the big things that we see that trips kids up on this one is really anything where you're trying to be that thing, right? If you're trying to be smart, if you're trying to be funny, you're going to trip yourself up, because people who are smart don't try to be smart. They don't try to show off that they're smart. And it's the same with people who are funny. They just are, right? They're not trying to. And so the biggest thing that we see that trips our kids up when they want other people to think they're funny is that they try way too hard. I think the most common example is if we have so many kids who are just naturally funny, right? Just their demeanors, their personalities, their humor, their wit, they're just naturally funny. And so sometimes what we notice is somebody will say something and the other kids will laugh and think it's funny. And one person will notice that, and then they will start saying that thing. It gets less and less funny every time they say it. So it might be funny the first time they repeat it, usually not after that. Then it gets
Annoying.
annoying. So that's the biggest thing that I would say we see that gets in the way of our kids having a reputation for being funny, is they try too hard, and they do a great job of noticing what people think is funny,
Mhm,
but then they try to copy it.
mhm,
So they try to repeat things that they've seen people laugh about.
mhm.
It could be even from memes or shows
Right.
or TV, but taking something that was somebody else's and using it as their own humor.
Mhm,
I would say that's the biggest thing that we see that trips them up.
mhm.
So what's something that's on our scale when we talk about a reputation for being funny that kids could do not enough, or they could
Mm.
do too much?
So when it comes to, you had mentioned that even if we don't want to be known as funny, we don't want to be known as not funny.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that sense, being a 0, 1, or 2 on the scale, um, that would look like if everyone is laughing or being silly or being goofy or like messing around and having a fun conversation with each other, and one person is just sitting there not laughing, not smiling, not engaging, and they're just too serious, that is when our students get a reputation for being not funny. And because of that, the other students don't really want to talk to them, or they don't want to joke around with them or include them in the conversations. If
Mm-hmm.
everyone else is having a great time and being silly or whatever it might be, and this student is just sitting here and not engaging, or at least pretending to think that something was funny,
Mm-hmm.
then that's how they get that reputation for being not funny as 0, 1, or 2.
Yeah.
And so we talk about how we would want to give someone a courtesy laugh, in that instance, where even if we don't think something is funny, like we don't have to think everyone's humor is our humor. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to think everything is funny just because other people are laughing. But if we notice that everyone else is laughing and we're the only ones who aren't, even at least giving a smile or giving a light like like a courtesy laugh, just like acknowledging that they said a joke and you want to have a friendly and a funny, or at least not, sorry, if you want to have a friendly and at least not a not funny reputation, then you give them a courtesy laugh. Um, so that's definitely a big concept. And so yeah, I'm trying to think of where to go from there.
Yeah. And then what would be an example of the other?
Yes.
Yeah.
So for being like an 8, 9, or 10 on the scale, um, I feel like the biggest one that we've seen is when a student would repeat the same joke over and over and over again. Um, Even if it's like Steph said, like even if it's funny the first or maybe even the second time you repeat it, over time and over a little bit of time, like that gets annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of our students have a more difficult time picking up on those clues. And so in those instances, if someone is saying the same joke for like the third or fourth time, the rest of the group is already not laughing, like they're not acknowledging that joke. And so I say, oh, notice, look at the rest of their reactions. Is anyone else laughing, or is anyone else smiling at that? And if not, what do you want to do instead, or what do you want to try instead? And then they usually say something like, oh, I'll say a different joke, or they'll just stop saying jokes because they know now that, okay, they're going a little too far, they're on that extreme of the scale. And so, they just like being able to point out like the reactions of the group around them, helps them realize that. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think another similar scenario is when kids laugh way more, way
Yeah.
louder, way longer than anyone else in the group.
Mhm.
It's interesting how that dynamic shuts down the humor. It's
Yeah.
interesting. So even in our dating class last night, I don't even
That's so
remember what
true.
was I don't even remember what was said, but something was said that was funny and everybody started laughing, but one student was so over the top about it.
Mhm.
I actually think he feels a little bit awkward talking about dating.
Mhm.
He's one of the younger kids in that group. And so I think he was just feeling a little awkward and trying to compensate for it. Everybody started laughing. He laughed so loudly that it just makes everybody else stop laughing. It just
Yeah.
creates a weird in like atmosphere when somebody is that over the top about it. And when it's, it's different when we've all had times where we can't even help ourselves, right? I mean, oh my gosh, I cannot even control myself right now. But it's different when you can tell there's one person that's just, it's almost dramatic, right? There's a drama to it, as opposed to it being a genuine, I can't help myself right now. But I do notice that when that happens, it shuts down the humor. Like everybody else was like, yeah, that was too much.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's definitely another way that some of our kids get a reputation for being annoying, is that they have really big reactions to humor, banging on the table, flipping back in their chair, like just being really loud, repeatedly, right? To where it becomes a habit or a pattern. That's another thing that gets in our kids' way when they want to have a reputation for being funny. So this is basically a summary of the first module of our program here at Starfish Social Club. It is 8 weeks long, and it is all about the concept of reputation. And we have 2 lessons on reputation for being smart, because one of them is things to just avoid, the word actually being one of them, things to just avoid. The second lesson is using the scale. So a bunch of different examples of things that we want to be somewhere in the middle, a whole lesson on reputation for being kind, a whole lesson on reputation for being funny. So this is the core of what we talk about here at Starfish. I guarantee that we overestimate our kids' understanding of the concept of reputation. We overestimate how well they understand the connection between what they say and do and how other people feel about them. We all do it. We overestimate it. And we underestimate how easy it is to teach them and to help them make a new reputation. This is what we do all the time here. It's not difficult. It just requires explicit instruction and specific examples. We even will sometimes use things that we see happening with certain kids or, in certain groups. So in this first 8 weeks of our program, that's what we're doing. We're helping our kids understand what a reputation is. We're helping them understand what their reputation is and how they got there. And the reason that it matters. So some people will say, I don't care what other people think about me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So your kid, especially if your kiddo tends to be a little bit more oppositional, I don't care what other people think about me. Even there's adults who just flaunt that in the world, right? 0 F's given, or, whatever. But here's the deal. The way, what other people think about us is how they treat us.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's why reputation is so darn important. If all the other kids think you're annoying, you are not going to have friends. And the other kids don't want to be seen hanging out with the kid that everybody thinks is annoying. So you even get second and third hand, right? Exposure. You even get kids who, well, I might not think Ramiro's annoying, but everybody else does. So I don't want to be hanging out with him because now that affects my reputation.
Yeah.
Okay. Reputation directly correlates with how other people treat us. Okay. That's what our kids really need to be able to understand. When we have a reputation for being annoying, people do not want to be around us. They don't want to interact with us. They don't want to be our friend. They don't want to play with us, whatever. But also on the other end of the scale, if we're not doing things to even create a reputation, we become invisible. These are our kids with social anxiety that become socially neglected. People usually aren't rude to them. They're usually not disrespectful to them. They become socially invisible because they have no reputation. They don't have a reputation for being kind because they don't say or do things that are kind. Even if they're one of the sweetest people in the world at home, if they are not saying or doing things that are kind, it's impossible for them to have that reputation. If they are not engaging and laughing with other kids, they cannot have a reputation for being funny. If they are not contributing to discussions and, possibly correcting things or giving feedback, they cannot have a reputation for being smart unless people are looking at their test results, right? They're not going to have a reputation for being smart if they don't ever answer questions in class, if they don't ever offer to share information. Okay, so that's why reputations are everything when it comes to making friends. We treat people based on how we feel about them. And we don't ever truly know what our reputation is because it's based on what other people think about us. But our biggest clue is how other people treat us. And I'll tell you guys, I mentioned this in a recent episode, maybe the last one. I really have a very hard time recognizing what other people think about me. It's like this blind spot that I have. I remember maybe 10 years ago, I was an assistant principal in a school and I had a co-assistant principal. We had very different personalities and very different skill sets, which meant that we were amazing partners because we compensated for each other. And so I remember I asked her one time, what do all the staff think about me? Like, I have no idea how people feel about me or what they think about me. And without missing a beat, she said, everybody thinks you don't give an F what they think about you. That was her immediate, and I was like, oh, that's not true at all. That's not how I feel at all. I do care what other people think about me. I'm not willing to be a different person because of what other people think about me, but I do care what people think, especially, I was in a leadership role. I was an administrator. It's very important to me what other people think about me. Oh my gosh. So just an example of how we never really know what our reputation is. I just know the staff at that school always came to me, when they needed help with something. I was the go-to person for behavior and autism. So I could tell that people respected me, that they thought that I was helpful and friendly. And even here at Starfish, I honestly don't know. I know what the kids think about me because they share it, right? They tell us, but with the parents, I don't know what the parents think about me, except for all the emails that we get. We even have parents sharing things that are posted in Facebook groups about Starfish Social Club. The comments I get from parents in the waiting room, that's how I know what kind of reputation we have here, is because of things that people say and do. But if nobody said or did anything, I would have zero clue what people think about me. I appreciate when somebody sends me an email and says, we have them on our website, the testimonials, thank you so much for what you do for my kiddo. When we see the kids running in the door, that gives us an idea of what kind of reputation we have.
Absolutely.
When I have kids who are having some maybe mental health situations and their parents say, Steph, they wanted to talk to you about it. So reputation is so much more important than we realize, so much more important than we give it credit for. And it is the number one thing that will determine our kids' ability to make and keep friends, is what kind of reputation they have. The silver lining in all of this is that they have control over it. They get to choose what they want their reputation to be. And then we are here to help them make that happen. And we have had some significant reputation changes here at Starfish Social Club. We have, the one that always comes to mind is a student who has been here for probably 5 years now.
Mhm.
And when he first started, he was the most challenging kiddo that I've ever met in terms of how he interacted with the other kids. He was very abrasive.
Mm.
He was disrespectful. He was rude. And now he works here. It's not Ramiro, but now he's one of our teaching assistants here at Starfish Social Club.
Mhm.
And the other kids adore him.
Yes.
I mean, I would say he checks all three of those. The kids think he's smart. They think he's funny. They think he's kind and helpful.
Mhm.
They adore him. They'll ask about him.
Mhm.
But man, when he first started, absolutely not the case.
Mhm.
He had a reputation for being rude, not smart, but a smart aleck,
Mm.
or whatever other, term you want to insert there. I can think of another kiddo, the one who tells us that when he's old enough, he's going to work at Starfish. Like, he's
Yes.
got it all planned out.
Yes.
He also had a reputation for being really annoying when he first started. The other kids didn't like him. They didn't want to be around him. We have a student who's been here less than a year that when she first started,
Mm.
oh my gosh,
Mhm.
none of the other students wanted anything to do with her. And all of those have completely changed. I
Yeah.
mean, their reputations have completely changed.
Absolutely.
Because even we've had some kids that we've talked about recently that in a couple weeks,
Mm.
right, their reputations have changed in a matter of weeks.
Mhm.
So that's the first module of our program. We are now, we have waiting lists now open for our in-person classes this summer and for our new Zoom classes coming this summer for kids anywhere in the US, where we will be focusing specifically on module 1, on the identity module. Also, you can purchase the identity module as a pre-recorded module on our website, so you can go through it on your own with your kiddo, 1 lesson a week for 8 weeks. And you can get the first lesson pre-recorded for free. If you just want to see what this whole thing is about, you can get the first lesson of the identity module pre-recorded for free, just so you can see what it is that we're talking about.
Mhm.
So hopefully that was helpful for you to recognize that reputation is the one thing that's going to make the difference between whether your kiddo has friends and
Mhm.
has other kids that want to be friends with him or her. We'll see you next time.